Hello and welcome to the Sideboard. My name is Ruben Bressler and we are here in Las Vegas, Nevada for the Open Series featuring the Invitational, and I am joined by Open Series regular and breaker of metagames, I think, Jeff Hoogland. Jeff, how are you doing?
I'm doing really well, Ruben.
Well, you've brought two interesting things to the table for this Invitational. Most interesting of all is going to be the standard deck that you've chosen to play. This is a bug mid-range deck. It's not control.
Yep.
Control you sort of defined as having a sweeper of some kind.
Yep, we don't have a Damnation or a Massacre or a Black Sun Zenith in this format.
No Gaze of Granite, really, to sort of fake a Wrath of God effect. So this is a mid-range deck in the truest sense of the word. It's good spells and good creatures.
Yep.
So tell me about the genesis of this deck.
You know, this is the first deck that I've just been really excited to play this standard season. There's just a good collection of cards that are well positioned against the top 3 decks in the format, which are Blue, White, and Esper, Mono Black, and Mono Blue. We just have a good selection of cards that beat up on the strategies that they're trying to implement.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the main things that I see about this deck is that one of the best ways to fight the monocolored devotion decks is to keep them off of that high devotion count. Make sure Master of Waves, Gary, Grey Merchant of Asphodel, and either of the gods can't take too much effect over the game.
Yeah.
And the best way to handle that is with cheap targeted elimination.
Yeah, and definitely the biggest problem card for a lot of decks in the Mono Blue, Mono Black is the Night Veil Spectre, which is why getting to play 4 Abrupt Decay in this deck is a huge draw.
Absolutely. Abrupt Decay is a card that I saw picking up in popularity this weekend. Even in the Mono Black deck, people are splashing green just for Abrupt Decay in the main deck, with also Golgari Charm in the sideboard, which is another card that is great, and you also have a copy of in the main deck and more in the sideboard. Talk to me about those two green-black instants.
So Abrupt Decay, as I mentioned, kills Night Veil Spectre. Like, tagging Underworld Connections is also very good. It allows our Thought Seizes to take things like Grey Merchant or, you know, Thassa that we wouldn't normally be able to Abrupt Decay. Golgari Charm is very powerful in that, in addition to having the extra remove enchantment effect, it also allows us to counter a Supreme Verdict, which is fantastic when we're playing our 4-mana creatures. The -1/-1 has also become exceedingly relevant with the increase in popularity of the white weenie decks, both the White Splash Black and White Splash Red. The Brave the Elements can't save you from -1/-1.
Yeah, absolutely. Golgari Charm and Abrupt Decay both able to take out Underworld Connections, Detention Sphere, highly played small enchantments in this format. Golgari Charm being able to deal with Master of Waves, also a pretty big deal.
Good transition there is this deck's able to pressure the blue-white deck well because we play a bunch of Planeswalkers and all of their Detention Spheres are poor against us because of our Abrupt Decays and the Golgari Charms.
Absolutely. So let's segue into the Planeswalkers. You have a trio of Planeswalkers here. Jace, Architect of Thought, pretty much the card advantage Planeswalker of the deck. You have a Vraska. Vraska to me is a little bit like Frost Titan in that all the other Titans were better in a vacuum, but against other Titans, Frost Titan was the one you wanted. Vraska is better against the other Planeswalkers.
Not only that, she's kind of just a generic catch-all. Something slipped through my Thought Seize, didn't have a Hero's Downfall for that.
Top deck Whip of Erebos, something
really
like
need to kill that, assemble the Legion.
Sure.
It's catch-all.
Yeah, absolutely.
You mentioned Jace being a card advantage engine, but Ashiok's also a really powerful card advantage engine as well.
Now, do you use Ashiok and how many Ashioks do you have, actually?
We play 3 Ashioks in the main deck.
So it's a pretty major part of the game plan. Do you use it mostly as a way to get opponents' creatures into play, or just as a clock?
So it serves different purposes against different decks. Against the red decks, most of them are playing Boros Reckoners, so having your Ashiok play their Boros Reckoner is very powerful. Against the blue-white deck, because their Detention Spheres are so poor against us, once Ashiok resolves, she's basically going to win the game. They're starting to play Elixir of Immortality while Ashiok's exiling their card, so that card has no effect against her.
Nice. Yeah, it's a pretty powerful card, obviously, in a vacuum, and it really hasn't had a home in a while. I'm glad that it's finally found a home here, but that's only half of the story.
It's extra powerful in this deck, actually, because of some of the creatures that we play. Playing a Sylvan Caryatid on 2 has double purpose in that if we shock ourselves to play the Ashiok on 3, we have an 0/3 blocker. Or if we don't want to shock ourselves, we can use the Caryatid to still cast Ashiok on 3.
Absolutely, yeah, and play defense to keep protecting your Planeswalkers. So the creatures are the real meat of the mid-range deck, and we have a couple of creatures that haven't really seen a ton of standard play. We start currently.
Yes.
We have a couple that have seen a lot of standard play in the past, which we'll get to. But I want to start with Prognostic Sphinx. Prognostic Sphinx, or the Diabetes Sphinx, as I like to call him, because it looks a little bit like Wilford Brimley, is a card that I love. I think it's great, but it just hasn't seen any play yet. Why did you decide to go with Prognostic Sphinx in this deck?
So I think this card is very powerful in this deck because it gives us an outlet to discard extra cards to. Namely, this deck doesn't have an X spell like Sphinx's Revelation or a mana hungry card like Aetherling, so we're able to hold our extra lands to protect our Prognostic Sphinx and not be punished for it. It's a finisher that, while a little bit slow on its own, finds us more finishers.
Got it.
So if they do eventually deal with it somehow, which usually they can't with Golgari Charm protecting it, we'll have something else to follow it up with right away.
Yeah, and being able to gain hexproof is a huge deal. You have another big beater that's able to gain hexproof, and that's Reaper of the Wilds. That's picked up a little bit of popularity thanks to the Brian Kibler green-black aggro deck.
Yep.
This card has a slightly different role in this deck in that this is sort of like the beginning of the curve.
Yep.
Whereas it's the top of the curve in the green-black aggro deck.
It's an effective clock at 4 power, and it's just difficult to kill. Even without its hexproof ability, it dodges Ultimate Price and Doomblade and Mizium Mortars and all these other cards.
Yeah, and even if it does die, it's usually taking some stuff with it.
Yes, with the Death Touch ability.
And so Scry, being able to take out 2 or 3 Scry along the way to dig into more answers,
exactly.
Just like the Prognostic Sphinx. We also have Sylvan Caryatid, as you mentioned, Pelukronos, another card that I think people are pretty used to. There's a card that is in Standard that used to be a menace, and isn't so much anymore, that you're running, and that's Scavenging Ooze. Why do you think Scavenging Ooze has fallen off the map, and why do you think it's a good time to bring it back?
So, the reason I settled on Scavenging Ooze for this deck was the biggest thing these colors needed was an effective way to negate the life loss that we're taking from our Shocklands and our Thoughtseize, and with all the removal spells that we're playing against creature decks, Ooze just gives us that extra push to get us past. Gaining, even 3 or 4 points of life against the mono blue deck is usually enough to seal the deal.
Yeah, this deck looks a lot like the Jund deck from last season in its form, in its function, not so much its form.
Yes.
It has slightly different pieces, but you've got 2-for-1s pretty much all over the place, and Scavenging Ooze, being able to take advantage of all of your elimination spells, really advantageous. You also have a pretty awesome sideboard.
We get to play we just play a bunch of the best sideboard cards in this deck.
Absolutely, and there are 2 that stick out to me. One is Notion Thief, which is surprisingly difficult to answer in Standard right now, except for Golgari Charm, which you're not bringing it in against those decks. Why did you decide Notion Thief was a way to go?
So, Notion Thief is powerful in the fact that unless they're gainsaying it, it's difficult for the Revelation decks to counter by leaving up a small amount of mana. A lot of the times they're going to leave up Negate is their common counter magic to stop your Sphinx's Revelation answer. Well, if you slam an Ocean Thief, that's not going to be good enough.
Right, and the last card I wanted to talk about in the sideboard is Dark Betrayal, which is a card that's been picking up a little bit in popularity thanks to Nightveil Spectre basically taking over the format. Dark Betrayal, just another sort of catch-all. You've also got Doomblade to be able to do the anti-Dark Betrayal impression. Why did you decide on Dark Betrayal in the sideboard?
I just wanted another couple of cheap, efficient answers. It makes Desecration Demon much worse in addition to Nightveil Spectre out of the mono black deck. Because our 4 of our main deck removal spells are Abrupt Decay, Desecration Demon can try and take away a game sometimes. The Dark Betrayal helps prevent that from happening.
Cool. And you always have a unique view on the metagame, and I'm sure people would like to see your mind at work even before these deck techs come to air. You're an avid user of the Reddit Magic forum?
Yes, the Spike subreddit is a good forum for talking about deck lists that you're taking to competitive events.
What name can people search for if they want to see your writings on the subject?
My username is very complicated. It's Jeff Hoogland.
Oh, well, be sure to write that down and take a note of it. It's extremely complex. Well, thank you so much for joining me in the sideboard, and good luck in this tournament, sir.
Thank you very much, Ruben.
Jeff Hoogland here at the Las Vegas Invitational.